Hello, my friend. This is Coach Marco Robert, and welcome to my channel. Guys, today I want to talk to you about the benefits of offshore banking. Hello, my friends. So if you're watching this and you've been wondering about what is this thing called offshore banking and what are the benefits of that, I want to touch on the topic here without going into details because it can get pretty complicated. You see, the first thing that you need to understand about offshore banking is that there are countries, or they're called jurisdictions. There are jurisdictions, legal jurisdictions around the world where, there are countries that may not have a lot of natural resources. See, if you live in America, for example, we have a lot of natural resources. If you live in Canada, there's a lot of natural resources. We have lumber, we have agricultural, we have land, we have ore that we can extract from the ground. A lot of natural resources. Now, countries like the Bahamas or the Cayman Island, they don't have a lot of natural resources. So what they're doing is, in order to attract money to their country, in order to attract business to their country, they're enacting laws that are very, very favorable to people with a lot of money. And they're basically saying, hey, why don't you come in our country and come and bank in our country? That we're going to give you some favorable terms when you bank in our country. And at the same time, you can actually enjoy the beautiful resorts, and you can, it's really good for our economy. Okay, so that's really the basis of offshore countries. It kind of started, I guess it's always been around, but really after World War II, the world kind of started to globalize itself, and that's when you see an explosion of these offshore countries. Today there's probably about 45 countries around the world that could be classified as an offshore country. It's basically whenever there is a legal jurisdiction that is doing something to attract capitals from the world. In fact, you can even say that just within the United States of America, some states are acting as offshore, in regard to other states. Different states have different taxation. So for example, there's no tax in Texas. There's no state tax in Florida. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to attract capitals from other states, okay? So what are the benefits of offshore banking? Well, the first thing that you need to understand is the world has changed a lot over the last 10, 15 years, especially since 9/11, where if you own money, if you have some money in an offshore country and you live in America, you basically have to let the government know anyway. So even though that country may not charge you any income tax on your revenue, you still have to pay your income tax in America, right? Also, what's happened just in the last few years, the American system that controls the US dollar basically have enacted a lot of new rules called Know Your Customers, right? Or KYC, Know Your Customers. And as an American or even an American resident, when you are banking anywhere around the world, banks are required to actually ask you a lot of questions, and so they can prove that they actually know who you are. So it's getting more and more and more complicated for the average American or the average Canadian to open an offshore bank account. There's many offshore banks that are not even interested in doing business with you. Now, there are some that still are, but usually they require a higher threshold. So, if 20 years ago you could walk inside of a bank in the Bahamas with $10,000 and open a bank account, today, if you want to open an offshore account, you need a couple $1 million. That's just the reality. Now, and by the way, there is another reason for that. It's probably not a good idea for you to open an offshore banking account until you do have a few $1 million. Here's why. Number one, it gets costly very quickly because you may have to travel to the country. You may have to get a residency permit in the country. Okay, so it gets expensive really quickly. Number two, the rules are changing almost every month, right? The rules in that jurisdiction are changing. The rules in your country are changing. And it's very, very, very easy for an average person to actually do something that is legal 1 month, but within 2 years, what they're doing is actually a fraud. Governments are constantly trying to kind of try to limit their citizens from actually putting their monies in different countries. Because if your money is in a different country, in theory, you can kind of avoid paying taxes. Well, governments don't like that. So they want to make sure that you pay your taxes. So they're doing everything they can to kind of minimize that. So what you're doing today could be legal, but by the time within 2 years, it may not be legal anymore. So you need to have quite a lot of money to make sure that you have attorneys looking into what you're doing to make sure that you're not committing something legal. I have friends in America, for example, who have completely given up on the idea of taking their money offshore. People with hundreds of millions of dollars. There's enough strategies. There's enough strategies just between the states in this country to actually minimize your income tax legally just within the states, that you don't have to travel to different countries around the world to actually do this. Now, in the world of offshore, there's something that is not available in America. It's called private wealth banking. While private banking is available in America, private wealth banking is kind of the next level. Private wealth banking is it's basically where the richest people in the world keep their money. So if you have a lot of money and you're watching this and you haven't heard about private wealth banking, well, maybe you need to start looking into that. Private wealth banking is usually done with a Swiss institution, right? So it's a Swiss bank. Now, the Swiss bank could be located in Hong Kong, it could be in Singapore, it could be in the Cayman Islands, but it's usually a Swiss institution. And then private wealth banking is basically where the richest people in the world keep their money. So private wealth bankers will give you access to certain instruments. They'll give you access to certain securities that are not typically available to the average investor. Now, again, if you have a couple $1 million, you could probably go to your bank in America, any bank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, any bank of your choosing, and you can open a private banking account, which is basically instead of going to the normal commercial bank where you stand in line and then you speak with the teller, instead you go to a different building. There's a receptionist. She said, "Sit down, Mr. Robert." Then she comes in, she brings you a cappuccino, and then your banker comes out dressed in a nice suit, shakes your hand, invites you into a private room, and then you have a conversation with your banker. If you have a couple $1 million in America, you should have one of those accounts. But private wealth banking is actually a notch above that. And private wealth banking offers you some amazing access to money. In fact, I'm almost afraid to share with you how private wealth banking works, because most of you would say, "Oh my God, this is so unfair." It is totally unfair. Totally unfair. The private wealth banking system is usually offshore, and it is where the richest people in the world actually keep their money. The princes and princesses, the kings and queens, the sultans of oil, they keep their money in the private wealth banking system. And they are afforded access and instruments and securities that are completely unfair. They can borrow money below 1%, and they can reinvest their money and make 12% in a very safe way. You understand? So the reason why I'm sharing this with you is this. Without going into details, because it's kind of pointless, but if you are someone who aspires to have more in life, you need to understand that at some point it becomes a great idea for you to look into the private wealth banking system, which is usually located offshore. which is usually owned by old, very well established Swiss banks. Because at that point, you can literally kind of define your own standards in life, right? So when I work with my clients, this is what I always tell them. I say, owning a business is cool. If you want to go up and increase your standards of living in life, number one, you need to figure out how to run a successful business, right? Number two, you need to become the kind of leader who can actually run several businesses. Number three, you need to learn how to transact in selling units of business. What do I mean by that? You need to learn to do mergers and acquisitions so that you can actually sell businesses, not just sell knickknacks and widgets, and okay? So you need to learn how to sell businesses. Then now you're making so much money, you want to start moving some of your monies around the world. Then you probably want to get a second passport so that you become an international person. So, because you may not understand this, but if you only have one passport, then you're kind of stuck in one country. It doesn't matter what country it is. You know, if the country decides that you can't leave, you can't leave. Look at what's happening right now. You know, we're filming this in kind of the middle of COVID and COVID-19. And there's a lot of people in America right now who pretty much cannot leave because they only have one passport. And then, you know, America's borders are closed. So a lot of people cannot leave. Now, if you're like me and you're also a Canadian citizen, if I want to leave, I can leave. I can go to Canada, and then from Canada, I can pretty much go anywhere I want. You understand? So at a certain point, if you thrive to grow yourself, to expand, at a certain point, you want to have made enough money to start disbursing your monies around the world, and you want to go get a second passport. That way there is not a single country that has dominion over your life, right? So, guys, my purpose today was not to give you an in-depth analysis of offshore banking. My purpose was simply to kind of rattle you, wake you up to the reality that people with money have different access. People with money have different status. They have different options. And then if you thrive to become one of these people, there is so much information online. It is insane. There's tons and tons and tons of information that you can find. But I'm going to give you a piece of warning, very important. Do not try to burn your bridges too fast. So many people, the guy makes, a couple $100,000 a year, and he takes his first $50,000 and he tries to put it in an account, and then 2 years later, the guy ends up in jail. So do not try to burn bridges. Do not try to go offshore just to save a few thousands of dollars or a few tens of thousands of dollars. It makes no sense, okay? There's tons and tons of strategies that you can do within your own country, especially if you live in the United States. There are tons of strategies that you can do here to legally minimize your taxation without taking any risks, okay? But as soon as you start making good money, millions of dollars every year, you need to start looking into offshore and the entire offshore banking system. It's a thrilling world, okay? Like, no joke, I have one of my friends who was just in Monaco on his personal yacht just a few weeks ago, and he tweeted, he said, you know what, last night we invited the prince, what's the name of the prince of Monaco again? Anyway, so the ruling prince of Monaco, I can't believe I can't remember his name. He said, you know what, we had a party on my yacht, I invited the prince of Monaco, okay? So you can have a pretty amazing lifestyle very, very quickly, but you need to be worth several tens of millions of dollars before you start doing that, okay? So I hope you enjoyed this video. This is Coach Marco Robert. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoy any of my videos, I like to talk about business topics. I like to talk about topics that affect business people. So if you enjoy those, just make sure that you actually like this video, comment on this video, make sure you hit the little bell so that you get notified every time that I create new videos. And then leave me a comment. I love to interact with you guys. Find out what you're thinking about this video, or if you want to know something specific, just let me know and I'll create a video about that. This is Coach Marco Robert. I'll see you guys later. Take care.
Guys, this is Coach Marco Robert. Remember, if you keep on doing what you've always done, you're going to keep on getting what you've always gotten. Click on the next videos and continue your education.